I'm Michael Bell, back with you with the CVB Challenge, the Christ Verse Per Book Challenge. We're looking at all 66 books in the Bible and showing how Jesus Christ is the protagonist, the front and center of each and every one of those books. And we have arrived at a passage I'm super excited about. This, probably more than any other passage in Scripture, turned me on to this idea. And it's the reason behind the Jesus on every page emphasis in this Christ Verse Per Book Challenge. And what I see in this verse is that Christ himself taught us to read the Scriptures in this way. He saw himself in the Scriptures. So we've arrived at Luke 24:44 that says, "These are my words that I spoke to you while I was still with you, that everything written about me in the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms must be fulfilled." Now, these words are pronounced by the risen Jesus on the day of his resurrection. This is Sunday, the first day of the week. What's happened is he's already appeared to two men on the road to Emmaus. One man's name is Cleopas, the other is unnamed. And what happens is that these men are confused. At first, they were very disappointed when Christ died and was buried, and they thought, well, our belief in this Messiah has come to nothing. We've wasted all these years following him and believing him and so on. But that very morning, some of their women came back reporting that the tomb was empty and that Jesus apparently had risen from the dead. And so they have business in Emmaus, and they're walking to Emmaus, and they're talking about what had transpired that day, what had transpired that week in the ministry of Jesus. Jesus himself appears to them, but their eyes can't recognize who he is. And so he begins to talk to them, and they think he's a stranger, and they're filling him in on what's going on. And then Jesus speaks to them and says, "O foolish ones and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Was it not necessary that the Christ should suffer these things and enter into his glory? And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself." They still don't realize that it's Jesus speaking to them. They invite him, once they arrive to Emmaus, to maybe spend the night with them and eat supper and so on. And he begins to do so and breaks bread with them. And all of a sudden, their eyes are opened as to his true identity, and he disappears. These two disciples then hoof it back to Jerusalem. Now, it's a distance of 7 miles between Emmaus and Jerusalem. They've walked 7 miles to get to Emmaus. That same day, they're walking back to Jerusalem. They go to the upper room where 10 of the 12 apostles are assembled. Judas obviously is not there, and Thomas is famously not there, but the other 10 are there. And they report, hey, Jesus has appeared to us like he appeared to the women this morning. And then Jesus comes into the room, and they believe he's a spirit or a ghost, but he gives them proofs that, in fact, he is flesh and blood, that he is bodily resurrected. He even eats in their presence to prove that he is no spirit or disembodied spirit or ghost. And then we get to this verse, and he says, this is what I've been trying to tell you. I've been trying to teach you how to read the Old Testament. It's about me. It's about the Messiah. I fulfill all these types and all these prophecies and all these figures and all these patterns that you see in the Old Testament. And he's saying, I'm part of what the law of Moses is all about, front and center. And I'm what the prophets are really all about, and the Psalms. And here he refers to the three main divisions of the Old Testament. The law of Moses, of course, the first 5 books, but then the prophets would include the historical books, as well as the major and minor prophets. The Psalms refers to all the poetry, the wisdom literature in the Bible. Not only the Psalms, but the Proverbs and Job and Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, books like that. And he's saying it's all about me. The entire Bible is about me and my messiahship, what my kingdom is going to be like, what my bride is going to be like, what my character is going to be like, where I'm going to be born, and all these details. And this was transformative for me when I discovered this in Scripture, when I was taught that really the Bible is to be read messianically. And I can just illustrate, prior to this, there were some wonderful Sunday school stories, about Noah and about Jacob and Esau and about Abraham and about Cain and Abel and whatnot, and all these Bible school stories and Sunday school stories. And it just seemed like, a really good story with a really nice little moral, like, you shouldn't steal, or you shouldn't lie, or, obey your mom and dad and those kinds of things. But we have missed the boat. The Bible is so much deeper than that. These stories are not about just some little moral. They're about Christ. They're revealing his agenda. They're telling us about the ages and what's going on. They tell us about the Jews and the Gentiles in anticipation. They tell us about Christ and Antichrist and so on and so forth. These are all played out in these types and in these narratives and in these stories that we have as our Sunday school stories that entertain us, that are so much deeper and so much more meaningful than we ever knew. This was part of the primitive teaching of the gospel. Peter preaches in Acts chapter 3, and he says, after showing that Jesus was spoken about by Moses, he says, and all the prophets who have spoken from Samuel and those who came after him also proclaimed these days, the days of the Messiah. Now, if Jesus is on every page of the Bible, shouldn't he also be on every page of your life and mine?